So under the existing framework, when these offenders have finished their sentences, they must be released unconditionally, even if they are still of high risk and are likely to reoffend. So the response is this sentence for enhanced public protection.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Law, I beg to introduce.
政府1月10号在国会提呈法案，修改刑事诉讼法，推出新判刑，严惩重犯风险高的性侵和暴力罪犯。在这个称为保护公共安全增强版 SEPP 的新判刑框架下，年满21岁或以上犯下严重性侵案件或伤人案件的危险罪犯，若经评估有较高的重犯风险，会被判服刑介于5年至20年，但刑满后不能自动获释，需由内政部长每年评估他们是否不再对公众构成安全威胁。不适合获释的罪犯将继续收押，甚至终身收押，通过评估的罪犯则可有条件释放。
We have seen in recent years as egregious cases, particularly involving a serial sexual offenders. 2 years ago, May 2022, an offender was sentenced to a maximum of 20 years of preventive detention for sexually assaulting 2 of his grandnieces. In 2001, about 23 years ago, he was convicted for statutory rape of his 6-year-old stepdaughter. And he was sentenced to imprisonment and caning, and he was released after 12 years in 2013. He moved in with his sister's family. 2 years later, while staying with his sister, he started committing sexual offenses against one of his sister's 10-year-old granddaughters. The girl moved out, and he moved to her younger sister in 2017 and started sexually assaulting her too, and she was 9 at the time. The court noted that his risk of sexual reoffending was high, and he disregarded the consequences of his actions. You look at this 9-year-old girls, 10-year-old girls. So under the existing framework, when these offenders have finished their sentences, they must be released unconditionally, even if they are still of high risk and are likely to reoffend. And then they go on to reoffend, and the consequences are and can be tragic. So the response is this sentence for enhanced public protection. This is a misunderstanding. Whether SEPP is more appropriate than a normal imprisonment term for this specific offender, that is for the court to decide. And after that minimum period, as I said, the offender will be assessed by experts with a very simple objective. What is the risk he is posing to society? Is society better off? And then the decision will be made by the minister based on expert opinions. Again, not clear understanding. If it clearly shows that your ability to rehabilitate is not there, you continue to pose a serious risk, and the experts say so, then yes, you may be detained longer. But on the other hand, it's also likely that some will be detained for a shorter period, because with SEPP, the judge who is imposing the sentence would have greater clarity and greater, I would say, peace of mind, because he can, impose what he thinks is a shorter sentence, at least a certain minimum duration, and he doesn't need to go for a much longer sentence, knowing that at the end of that minimum duration, the offender can be released depending on whether he has rehabilitated, or, if as experts will assess whether he is still a risk, and if they assess that he is a risk, he may be kept in longer. And therefore, the court may not need to impose a much longer sentence upfront. So actually, it might provide for people to come out earlier.
Criminal Procedure Miscellaneous Amendments Bill.
除了拟定新的 SEPP 判刑，政府提呈的法案也提出废除现有的改造性监禁和修订预防性监禁，把针对惯犯的预防性监禁重新命名为保护公共安全 SPP 判刑。SPP 适用于年满21岁或以上的惯犯，刑期介于5年至20年。SPP 与 SEPP 两者之间最大的差别在于，罪犯服完2/3刑期后，就由部长评估是否适合有条件释放。不能有条件释放的罪犯，在刑满后还是必须获释。法案提出的另一项重要修正是制定有助于提高刑事调查效率的法证医学检验新框架。
Accused persons, police will be able to ask them to undergo forensic medical examination, even if they don't consent. For example, if you are accused of sexually assaulting someone, police can require you to give a DNA swab to see if it matches the DNA found on the victim. For victims, generally consent is required. If they don't consent, no examination, but there are some exceptions. For example, if the delay will result in the loss of evidence, and if the victim has a physical or mental condition that means that he or she cannot give consent within a reasonable time. And this is important because time is often very critical, especially for DNA evidence, because DNA degrades very quickly when exposed to the environment. So the essence of the changes are how can we better protect the public, ensure that guilty persons are brought to justice, while also being fair and ensuring appropriate safeguards.